The crystal champagne flute caught the light from our dining room chandelier as Howard Gold raised it high above the mahogany table. My father-in-law's weathered face wore that smug expression I'd grown to despise over 15 years of marriage to his daughter. The expensive suit, the gold watch, the way he commanded attention, everything about him screamed old money and entitlement. "Drake," he said, his voice carrying the authority of a retired judge who'd never learned to leave the bench behind. "We've made a decision about your future." I set down my fork, the prime rib suddenly tasting like cardboard. Around the table, Lana's carefully curated circle of friends fell silent. My wife sat to my right, her manicured fingers wrapped around her own glass, her expression unreadable behind those perfectly applied layers of makeup. "We're going to replace you with someone else," Howard continued, his tone as casual as if he were discussing the weather. "You're too old to be useful." The words hung in the air like smoke from an expensive cigar. I felt my chest tighten, but I kept my face neutral. 15 years in IT had taught me to hide my reactions when systems crashed around me. Lana turned toward me, her blue eyes cold as winter ice. She nodded once, deliberate and final. "It's for the best, Drake. You understand." The chorus of agreement from her friends felt rehearsed. Janet Morrison, the real estate agent with the fake smile. Patricia Wells, whose husband owned half the car dealerships in town. Sandra Kim, who'd never worked a day in her life, but somehow always had opinions about everyone else's career choices. "Franklin will be moving in next week," Howard added, gesturing toward the man seated across from me. Franklin Ormsby, used car dealer, country club regular, and apparently my replacement. He had that slick confidence that came from talking people into overpriced vehicles and bad financing deals. Franklin raised his glass with a grin that showed too many teeth. "Nothing personal, Drake. Business is business." I reached for my water glass, buying time to process what I was hearing. The smart home system I'd installed hummed quietly around us. Cameras in every corner, motion sensors, digital locks, all connected to servers I controlled. The irony wasn't lost on me that they were planning my removal while surrounded by technology I'd built and maintained. "When did you all decide this?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Months ago," Lana replied, not bothering to hide her impatience. "We've been planning the transition. Howard has everything arranged." Howard leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying his moment of power. "The house will transfer to Lana's name. Franklin has business connections that will be beneficial for the family. Your services are no longer required." I looked around the table at faces I'd known for years, people I'd helped with computer problems, network installations, security systems, people who'd smiled at me during holidays and birthdays, who'd accepted my hospitality and my work without question. "What about our marriage?" I asked Lana directly. She shrugged, a gesture so casual it felt like a slap. "That's over too. Franklin and I have been together for 6 months. Everyone knows." The admission should have hurt more than it did. Instead, I felt something cold and calculating settle into place behind my ribs. I glanced at Franklin, noting how comfortable he looked in my dining room, how familiar he seemed with the layout of my home. 6 months, I repeated. "Interesting timeline?" "Drake, please don't make this difficult," Lana said, her voice taking on that condescending tone she used when explaining obvious things to slow children. "We're adults. These things happen." I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor I'd installed myself 3 summers ago. "You're right. These things do happen." Howard smiled, clearly pleased with how smoothly his announcement had gone. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. Franklin will need the access codes for the security system and the house automation." "Of course," I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. "Let me just check something first." While they returned to their celebration dinner, I opened the home security app and began scrolling through the camera feeds. Every angle of the dining room was covered, every word of their conversation recorded in high definition. The system I'd designed to protect our home was about to serve a very different purpose. I excused myself to the bathroom and locked the door behind me. My reflection in the mirror looked the same as always, 42 years old, graying at the temples, the kind of face that blended into crowds. But behind my eyes, something fundamental had shifted. I opened my phone's messaging app and began copying every text conversation from Lana's cloud backup. The automatic sync I'd set up years ago for family security had been quietly archiving everything: her messages with Franklin, her planning sessions with her father, her complaints about me to her friends. The evidence painted a picture of calculated betrayal that went back months. Photos she'd sent to Franklin, plans they'd made for my removal, conversations about selling my business equipment and liquidating my retirement accounts. I returned to the dining room to find them toasting their success. Franklin had moved to the chair beside Lana, his hand resting possessively on her shoulder. "Drake," Howard called out, "come join us for a final toast. No hard feelings." I picked up my glass and raised it toward the ceiling camera that was recording everything. "To new beginnings," I said. "May everyone get exactly what they deserve." The irony in my voice went completely over their heads. They clinked glasses and laughed, already planning their future in my house, with my assets, using my systems. I excused myself again, this time heading to my home office. The computer setup that had built my consulting business filled most of the room. Multiple monitors, server racks, networking equipment that most people couldn't even identify. I logged into the property management system and pulled up the deed to our house. There, buried in the technical addendums I'd insisted on during the original purchase, was the clause that would change everything. A security provision that gave me unilateral control over property access in cases of domestic or financial threats. The provision had been my insurance policy against exactly this kind of situation. Howard might be a retired judge, but he'd never bothered to read the fine print on documents he considered beneath his attention. I filed the property freeze electronically, the digital signature automatically notarized through the county system. Within minutes, every financial account tied to the house was locked pending review. Every credit card, every automatic payment, every digital transaction would require my authorization. Next, I accessed the home automation system and began changing access codes. Door locks, garage controls, security cameras, even the smart thermostats, everything now responded only to my authorization. The car system took longer to modify. Lana's BMW had a remote disable feature that came standard with the insurance tracking package. A few keystrokes redirected the control protocols to my personal server. When I returned to the dining room, they were discussing vacation plans. Franklin was describing a resort in the Caribbean where he wanted to take Lana for their honeymoon. "Sounds expensive," I commented, settling back into my chair. "Don't worry about our finances," Lana replied curtly. "You won't be involved in those decisions anymore." I nodded and finished my dinner in silence, listening to them plan their future while I systematically dismantled their present. Every few minutes, I received confirmation notifications on my phone: accounts frozen, access revoked, control transferred. Howard stood up as the evening wound down, clearly pleased with how his announcement had been received. "Franklin, I'll have the house keys made tomorrow. Lana, we should meet with the attorney on Tuesday to finalize the property transfer." "Actually," I said, setting down my napkin, "there might be a small delay with that." Howard frowned. "What kind of delay?" I showed them my phone screen displaying the property freeze notification. "It seems the house is under legal review. Something about irregularities in the ownership documentation." Lana's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "Technical details," I replied with a shrug. "Probably nothing, but until it's resolved, no changes can be made to the property status." Franklin leaned forward, his confident demeanor slipping slightly. "How long does something like that take?" "Hard to say. Could be weeks. Could be months. Depends on how complicated the review gets. Howard's judicial experience kicked in, and I could see him trying to process the legal implications. Drake, what exactly did you file? Just some paperwork, making sure everything is properly documented before any transfers take place. I stood up and began clearing dishes. You understand, Howard. Legal procedures have to be followed. The dinner party broke up shortly after that, with considerably less celebration than Howard had planned. Franklin lingered, clearly wanting to discuss the property situation, but I excused myself to finish cleaning up. As I loaded the dishwasher, I watched through the kitchen window as they gathered on the front porch, their animated conversation visible in the outdoor lighting. Lana was gesturing angrily while Howard made phone calls. My phone buzzed with a text from Lana. Fix this immediately or you'll regret it. I typed back, technical problems require technical solutions. Could take time. She responded with a string of messages that would have been more intimidating if I hadn't already read months of similar threats in her conversations with Franklin. I went to bed that night, listening to Lana pace around the house, trying door codes that no longer worked and making increasingly frustrated phone calls to her father. The next morning, I woke up to find her standing in the bedroom doorway, fully dressed and furious. The garage won't open, she announced, and my car won't start. I sat up slowly, stretching as if I'd just woken up. That's strange. Maybe there's an electrical problem. Don't play games with me, Drake. I know you did something. I got out of bed and walked to the window, looking down at her BMW sitting motionless in the driveway. Have you tried calling roadside assistance? I tried calling everyone. The car company says there's a security lock on the vehicle. The garage door company says our service contract has been suspended. Even the coffee maker won't work. I nodded sympathetically. The whole house runs on integrated systems. If there's a glitch somewhere, it can cascade through everything. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. Fix it. Now. I'll look into it, I promised. But these kinds of system failures can be really complicated. Might take a while to track down the root cause. Lana stared at me for a long moment, clearly trying to decide whether I was being genuine or deliberately obtuse. Franklin is coming over this morning. He needs access to the house. That's fine, I said, as long as the security system recognizes him. What do you mean? I walked past her toward the bathroom. The system only allows entry for authorized users. Since the legal status of the house is under review, I can't add new users until that's resolved. Her phone rang before she could respond. I listened from the bathroom as she explained to Franklin that there were technical difficulties with the house systems. When I came out, she was gone. I found her in the kitchen, trying to make coffee with a machine that required digital authorization for operation. This is ridiculous, she muttered, stabbing at the control panel. I can make coffee the old-fashioned way, I offered. There's a regular coffee maker in the garage. The garage I can't get into? Right. That is a problem. I spent the morning working in my office while Lana made increasingly frustrated phone calls. Through the security cameras, I watched Franklin arrive and spend 20 minutes trying to get past the front door locks. Around noon, Howard's Mercedes pulled into the driveway. The three of them stood on the front porch for nearly an hour, Howard making his own series of phone calls, while Franklin examined the door locks and Lana paced back and forth. I finally went outside to join them, carrying a cup of coffee from the machine I'd temporarily reauthorized for my own use. Any luck with the technical problems? Howard asked, his tone carefully neutral. Still working on it, I replied. These smart home systems are incredibly complex. When something goes wrong, it affects everything. Franklin stepped forward, trying to project the same confidence he used on car buyers. Look, Drake, we're all adults here. Let's work together to solve this. I nodded agreeably. Absolutely. What do you think we should do? Start by giving me the access codes. I wish I could, but the system won't accept new codes while the property review is pending. Legal liability issues. Howard's judicial instincts were clearly bothering him. "Drake, what exactly did you file with the county?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the official documentation. "Standard property protection filing. Protects against unauthorized transfers or access changes during domestic disputes." He read through the legal language, his expression growing more concerned with each paragraph. "This is comprehensive." I wanted to be thorough. Lana grabbed the phone from her father's hands. "How do we cancel it?" "That's between you and the county," I said. "I'm just the person who filed it." Franklin was growing impatient with the legal discussion. "Can't we just break a window or something?" "That would be breaking and entering," Howard replied absently, still processing the implications of the filing. "The house is legally secured pending review." I finished my coffee and headed back toward the door. "I'll keep working on the technical problems. Hopefully everything will be resolved soon." As I reached for the door handle, it opened automatically, recognizing my biometric signature. I turned back to see their faces. Howard calculating legal angles, Lana furious but helpless, Franklin finally beginning to understand that his easy transition into my life wasn't going to happen as planned. "Oh," I added, as if just remembering something important. "I should mention that I'll be staying at a hotel for a few days while I work on these system problems. Don't want to be in the way while you're dealing with all this." Lana's eyes narrowed. "What hotel?" "Haven't decided yet. I'll let you know." I went inside and packed a bag while they continued their discussion on the porch. The security cameras showed Howard making more phone calls, while Franklin tried to convince Lana that they could find another place to stay. Before I left, I set the house systems to full security mode. Every door, every window, every access point would remain locked until I personally authorized entry. The cameras would continue recording everything, uploading to secure servers that only I could access. I drove to the Marriott downtown and checked into a suite with a view of the river. From my laptop, I could monitor every camera in the house, track every attempt at entry, and watch their growing frustration in real time. Around 6 that evening, I ordered room service and settled in to review the security footage from the day. Howard had brought a locksmith who'd taken one look at the digital locks and refused to attempt a bypass without legal authorization. Franklin had tried to climb through a basement window, only to discover that the security system had engaged physical barriers that made entry impossible. Lana had spent most of the afternoon on the phone with attorneys, trying to find someone who could expedite the property review process. My phone rang around 8. Lana's name appeared on the screen. "Drake, this has gone far enough." "I agree," I said. "Technical problems can be really disruptive. Stop pretending this is accidental. We both know what you're doing. I'm trying to fix a complicated system failure while dealing with a legal property review. What do you think I'm doing?" There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice had taken on the manipulative tone she used when she wanted something. "Look, we can work this out. Maybe we moved too fast with the transition. We could slow things down, give you more time to adjust." "That's thoughtful of you. So you'll fix the house systems?" "I'll keep working on the technical problems, but the legal review is out of my hands." "Drake, I'm asking nicely. Don't make me involve the police." I looked out at the city lights reflecting on the river. "What would you tell them? That your husband filed legal paperwork and your smart house isn't working?" She hung up without answering. The next morning brought a new development. Through the security cameras, I watched a police cruiser pull into my driveway. 2 officers got out and spoke with Howard, Lana, and Franklin on the front porch. I called the house phone, which rang through the outdoor speakers. "Drake?" Lana's voice carried clearly through the camera audio. "I saw the police car. Is everything all right?" One of the officers took the phone. "Sir, this is Sergeant Martinez with the city police. We're responding to a report of a domestic dispute." "I'm not sure what kind of dispute you're referring to, officer. I'm staying at a hotel while we work through some technical problems with our house systems. Your wife says you've locked her out of her own home. The house systems are malfunctioning, and there's also a legal property review pending with the county. I can't override either of those issues. I heard muffled conversation as the officer spoke with Howard off the phone. Sir, are you willing to come to the house and discuss this situation? Of course. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I arrived to find the officers examining the door locks while Howard explained the legal situation. The senior officer, Sergeant Martinez, was clearly trying to determine whether any laws had been broken. Mr. Torrin, he said as I approached, can you explain what's happening with your house? I showed him the same property filing I'd shown Howard. We're going through a domestic situation, so I filed for legal protection of the property. The smart home systems are also experiencing technical failures. Can you open the door? I can try, but the system has been unreliable. I approached the front door, which opened immediately for my biometric scan. The officers exchanged glances. It seems to be working now, Sergeant Martinez observed. It comes and goes, I explained. Very frustrating. Franklin stepped forward. Officer, he's obviously controlling the system deliberately. Can you prove that? The sergeant asked. Franklin looked to Howard and Lana for support, but neither could offer evidence beyond their suspicions. The legal filing appears to be legitimate, Sergeant Martinez said, after reviewing the paperwork again. And if there are technical problems with a private security system, that's not a police matter. Howard tried a different approach. Officer, my daughter has a right to access her own home. According to this filing, the property ownership is under legal review. Until that's resolved, I can't determine who has what rights. The police left with instructions for everyone to work through the legal system rather than trying to resolve things through confrontation. As their cruiser disappeared down the street, I could see the frustration building in Franklin's face. This is ridiculous, he said, his car salesman charm finally cracking. We all know what's really happening here. I nodded sympathetically. Technical problems can be really frustrating, but I'm sure we'll get everything sorted out soon. That afternoon, while monitoring the cameras from my hotel room, I watched Franklin return alone. He spent an hour walking around the house, testing windows and examining the security system components. Around sunset, he tried to force entry through the back door, using what looked like a crowbar from his truck. The security system immediately activated additional locks and triggered silent alarms that sent notifications to my phone. I called the police. I'd like to report a break-in attempt at my house, I told the dispatcher, providing my address. 20 minutes later, the same officers who'd been there that morning arrived to find Franklin still trying to pry open the back door. This time, there was no ambiguity about what was happening. Franklin was arrested for attempted breaking and entering. From my hotel room, I watched Lana and Howard arrive just as Franklin was being loaded into the police cruiser. The conversation on my front porch was heated, with Lana gesturing angrily while Howard made more phone calls. My phone rang again around 10 that night. You set him up, Lana accused without preamble. I reported someone trying to break into my house. What they choose to do about it is up to them. Franklin was just trying to get his clothes. What clothes? There was a pause. He's been staying here for weeks. That's interesting. I don't remember authorizing that. You didn't know because you never pay attention to anything that matters. I pulled up the security footage from the past month, scanning through hours of recordings. Sure enough, Franklin's truck appeared in my driveway regularly, often staying overnight. You're right, I said. I should pay more attention. The next few days brought a series of escalating attempts to regain control of the situation. Howard hired a team of attorneys who filed motions to expedite the property review. Lana contacted a locksmith company that specialized in high-security systems. But every legal maneuver ran into the same problem. The property filing I'd submitted was legitimate and comprehensive. Every technical solution failed because the security system I'd designed was more sophisticated than anything they'd encountered. Meanwhile, I used my access to monitor their activities and plan my next moves. The security cameras showed Lana meeting with her friends, clearly trying to build support for her version of events. Howard spent hours on the phone with judges and attorneys, calling in favors to expedite legal processes. Franklin, released on his own recognizance, was staying at a motel on the edge of town. The break-in arrest had damaged his reputation at the country club, and I could see the strain beginning to show in his interactions with Lana. A week into my hotel stay, I decided it was time to expand the scope of my response. The initial property freeze had been defensive, protecting what was mine while they regrouped. Now I needed to go on the offensive. I started with Franklin's business. His used car lot operated on thin margins and reputation, like most small dealerships. A few anonymous tips to the State Consumer Protection Agency about sales practices, combined with some carefully documented complaints about vehicles he'd sold, would create serious problems for his operating license. The documentation wasn't difficult to find. Franklin's own social media posts showed him bragging about deals he'd made, often including details about vehicles he'd misrepresented to buyers. His text messages with Lana revealed his casual attitude toward disclosure requirements and safety inspections. I compiled everything into a comprehensive report and submitted it through the state's online complaint system. Within 48 hours, Franklin's lot was scheduled for a surprise inspection. Next, I turned my attention to Lana's professional life. Her position as HR manager at Prestige Properties gave her access to confidential employee information and significant influence over hiring decisions. Her text messages revealed a pattern of favoritism, discrimination, and ethical violations that would horrify any competent attorney. She'd been sharing confidential salary information with her friends, making hiring decisions based on personal relationships rather than qualifications, and using company resources for personal projects. All of it documented in her own messages, automatically backed up to the cloud storage I managed. I created an anonymous email account and sent a detailed report to Prestige Properties' corporate compliance department, including time-stamped screenshots and specific examples of policy violations. The response was swift. Lana was suspended pending investigation within 24 hours of my report. From my hotel room, I watched through the security cameras as she returned home that afternoon, clearly agitated. She spent an hour on the phone with her father, pacing around the front yard since she still couldn't get inside. Howard arrived that evening with a new strategy, a court order demanding immediate access to the house for Lana to retrieve essential personal items. I met them at the front door with a box of Lana's clothes and toiletries. "Here are the essential items," I said, setting the box on the porch. "Everything else will have to wait until the property review is complete." Howard examined the court order, clearly frustrated that his legal maneuvering had resulted in such a limited victory. "This is just the beginning, Drake. We'll have this property nonsense resolved within days." "I hope so," I replied. "These technical problems are really inconvenient for everyone." Lana grabbed the box and glared at me. "You think you're so clever, but you're just delaying the inevitable." "You're probably right. Technical problems usually resolve themselves eventually." That night, I received a call from an unlisted number. "Drake Torrin?" The voice was female, young, with a slight accent I couldn't place. "Who's asking?" "My name is Mara Torwin. I work for Advanced Security Solutions. I understand you're having some domestic difficulties." I sat up straighter. Advanced Security Solutions was the premier security firm in the region, handling everything from corporate protection to high-end residential systems. "What's your interest in my situation?" "Professional curiosity. Your home security setup is quite sophisticated. I'd like to meet and discuss some options that might be beneficial for both of us." "What kind of options?" "The kind that require a face-to-face conversation. Are you available tomorrow afternoon?" We arranged to meet at a coffee shop downtown. I spent the rest of the evening researching Advanced Security Solutions and Mira Torwin. The company had an impressive client list and a reputation for discretion. Mira's professional profile showed expertise in digital forensics and investigation support. The next afternoon, I found her waiting at a corner table in the coffee shop. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 23, with dark hair and the kind of alert eyes that suggested she noticed everything. "Mr. Torrin," she said, standing to shake my hand. "Thank you for meeting with me." "What's this about, Ms. Torwin?" She gestured for me to sit, then pulled out a tablet. "I've been following your situation with interest. The property filing was clever, and your security system design is impressive." "How do you know about any of that?" "It's my job to know about security situations in the area. Your case is unique." She swiped through several screens on her tablet, showing what appeared to be surveillance photos of Howard, Lana, and Franklin. "These people have been making inquiries about ways to bypass your security measures. They've contacted several firms, including mine." I leaned forward. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing useful, but their conversations were very revealing." She turned the tablet toward me. "Would you like to see what they're really planning?" The screen showed a transcript of a conversation between Howard and a private investigator. They were discussing ways to discredit me, including manufactured evidence of mental instability and financial impropriety. "How did you get this?" "Professional methods. The question is, what do you want to do with the information?" I studied her face, trying to read her motivations. "Why are you helping me?" "Let's just say I have my own reasons for wanting to see these people fail." She showed me more documents, financial records showing Howard's attempts to manipulate property values, Franklin's history of insurance fraud, Lana's misuse of company resources. "This is enough to destroy all of them," I said, "if used correctly. But timing is crucial, and you'll need help with the technical aspects." "What kind of help?" Mara smiled, and for the first time, I saw something cold and calculating behind her professional demeanor. The kind that turns defense into offense. Over the next hour, she outlined a plan that was both elegant and devastating. Using her firm's resources and my inside knowledge, we could systematically dismantle their lives while staying completely within legal boundaries. "Why would you risk your professional reputation for this?" I asked. "Some risks are worth taking," she replied. "Besides, I'm very good at what I do." We shook hands, and I felt like I'd just formed an alliance with someone far more dangerous than she appeared. That evening, I returned to the house to collect more clothes and check the security systems. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Franklin's truck parked across the street. He got out as I approached the front door, his usual salesman confidence replaced by barely controlled anger. "We need to talk," he said, walking toward me. I stopped and turned to face him. "About what?" "About ending this game you're playing." "I'm not playing any games. I'm dealing with technical problems and legal procedures." He stepped closer, trying to use his height advantage to intimidate me. "Cut the act, Drake. We both know what's really happening here. What's really happening is that you tried to break into my house and got arrested for it." "That was a misunderstanding." "Was it?" "Because the security footage was pretty clear." Franklin's face reddened. "You set me up. I reported a crime. What you did was your choice." He looked toward the house, clearly frustrated by his inability to access what he'd been promised. "Lana told me you were pathetic. She was wrong. You're just vindictive." "That's an interesting perspective from someone who was planning to take over my life." "I wasn't taking anything. She offered." "What exactly did she offer?" Franklin realized he'd said too much and tried to backtrack. "Look, this doesn't have to be complicated. We can work out some kind of arrangement." "What kind of arrangement?" "You get a fair settlement, we get the house, everyone moves on." I pretended to consider this. "That's generous. What would constitute a fair settlement?" "We're prepared to offer you $50,000 and your business equipment." I almost laughed. The house alone was worth 10 times that amount. and my business assets were worth considerably more. "I'll think about it," I said. "Don't think too long. We're not going to wait forever." As he walked back to his truck, I made a mental note to increase security around my hotel. Franklin was clearly growing desperate, and desperate people made poor decisions. Inside the house, I found evidence of continued attempts at entry. Scratches around the back door locks, fingerprints on windows, even what looked like an attempt to access the electrical panel. I uploaded all the evidence to secure servers and sent copies to Mara. If Franklin wanted to escalate things, I'd be ready. The next morning brought news that Franklin's car lot had failed its state inspection. Violations included safety issues, documentation problems, and evidence of odometer tampering. His dealer license was suspended pending investigation. Lana's situation was deteriorating as well. Prestige Properties had expanded their investigation into her conduct, and several former employees had come forward with additional complaints about her management practices. Howard was fighting on multiple fronts, trying to expedite the property review, defending Franklin against criminal charges, and attempting to limit the damage to Lana's career. I met with Mira again that afternoon to review our progress. "They're starting to panic," she reported. "Howard contacted 3 different private investigators yesterday, trying to find something he can use against you." "Did he find anything?" "Nothing useful. Your record is remarkably clean." She showed me transcripts of Howard's conversations with the investigators. He was offering substantial payments for any information that could discredit me or expedite the property transfer. He's also been making calls to judges he knows, trying to get the property review fast-tracked. Will that work? Not with the documentation you filed. But he's getting creative with his legal arguments. Mira pulled up another document on her tablet. This is more interesting. Lana and Franklin have been discussing alternative approaches. The transcript showed a conversation about hiring someone to resolve the situation through intimidation. They'd discussed everything from vandalism to physical threats. "This changes things," I said. "It gives us options," Mira agreed, "but we need to be careful about how we use this information." "What do you recommend?" "Let them make the first move. When they cross the line from legal maneuvering to criminal behavior, we'll be ready." That evening, as I worked in my hotel room, I received a call from an unknown number. "Drake, this is Janet Morrison. We need to talk." Janet was one of Lana's closest friends, a real estate agent who'd been at the New Year's Eve dinner. "What can I do for you, Janet?" "This situation has gone too far. People are getting hurt." "What people?" "Franklin's business is destroyed. Lana might lose her job. Howard's reputation is being damaged." "That's unfortunate, but I'm not sure how any of that relates to me. Don't pretend you're innocent in this. We all know what you're doing." I leaned back in my chair, curious about where this conversation was heading. "What am I doing?" "You're systematically destroying everyone who was involved in the decision to replace you." "That's an interesting theory. Do you have any evidence to support it?" There was a pause. "I'm calling to offer you a deal." "What kind of deal?" "We'll give you the house and a cash settlement. In exchange, you stop whatever you're doing to hurt these people." "How much cash?" $200,000. It was a significant increase from Franklin's earlier offer, which told me they were getting truly desperate. "That's generous," I said. "But there's a problem." "What problem?" "I'm not doing anything to hurt anyone. I filed some legal paperwork and I'm dealing with technical problems. Everything else is just unfortunate coincidences." "Drake, please. We both know that's not true." "Can you prove it's not true?" Janet's frustration was evident in her voice. "What do you want? Just tell us what it will take to end this." "I want my wife to stop cheating on me, my father-in-law to stop trying to steal my property, and my house systems to work properly. Can you arrange any of that?" "You know we can't undo what's already happened?" "Then I guess we don't have much to discuss." After she hung up, I called Mira to report the conversation. "They're getting desperate," she confirmed, "which means they're about to make mistakes." What kind of mistakes? The kind that will give us everything we need to finish this. The next day, those mistakes began in earnest. Franklin's first serious error came at 9:30 on a Thursday morning. Through my hotel room window, I watched him park his truck outside the building and walk into the lobby with the swagger of someone who thought he still held cards worth playing. My phone rang 5 minutes later. "Mr. Torrin, this is the front desk. You have a visitor who says he needs to speak with you about a family emergency. Send him up." I opened the door before Franklin could knock, finding him in the hallway with his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets and his salesman smile nowhere to be seen. "Nice place," he said, looking past me into the suite. "Must be expensive. What do you want, Franklin?" "To end the situation before it gets worse for everyone." I stepped aside to let him enter. How much worse could it get? He walked to the window and looked down at the street, clearly trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "My business is shut down. Lana's suspended from her job. Howard's spending a fortune on lawyers." That does sound problematic. Franklin turned back toward me, and I could see the desperation he was trying to hide. "You did this. All of it." "That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof?" "I don't need proof. I know." I sat down in one of the suite's leather chairs and gestured for him to do the same. "What exactly do you think I did?" "You filed false reports about my business. You sabotaged Lana's job. You manipulated the legal system to steal our house." "Our house?" Franklin's face reddened. "You know what I mean." "Actually, I don't. It's my house. I bought it, I maintain it, and my name is on the deed." "Lana has rights." "Lana has the rights that marriage and law provide. But last I checked, you're not married to her." Franklin stood up abruptly and began pacing around the room. "This is about more than legal technicalities." "What's it about?" "It's about you being a vindictive loser who can't accept that his wife found someone better." I nodded thoughtfully. "That's an interesting perspective. Tell me more about how you're better." "I can provide for her in ways you never could." "Such as?" Franklin gestured vaguely. "Financial security, social connections, a future." "How's your financial security working out now that your business is closed?" The question hit its target. Franklin's pacing stopped, and his hands clenched into fists. "That's temporary. I'll rebuild." "With what? Your dealer license is suspended, your inventory is impounded, and your reputation is destroyed." "You did that?" "I reported violations that investigators confirmed. If there were no violations, there would be no consequences." Franklin moved closer to my chair, trying to use physical intimidation. "You think you're so smart, but you're just a pathetic tech nerd who got lucky." I remained seated, looking up at him calmly. "Lucky how?" "Lucky that you found ways to cheat the system." "What system did I cheat?" "The property filing, the security setup, the business reports." "All of which were legal and documented." Franklin's control finally snapped. "Legal doesn't make it right." "What would be right, Franklin?" "You accepting that your marriage is over and moving on with your life. Like you accepted that my house wasn't yours to move into." "Lana invited me." "Lana doesn't own the house." Franklin leaned down, putting his face close to mine. "She will." "Based on what?" "Based on Howard's connections and the legal system working the way it's supposed to." I stood up slowly, forcing Franklin to back away. "You seem very confident about that." "Howard knows judges. He knows how to work the system." "Interesting. Tell me more about how he works the system." Franklin realized he was saying too much, but his anger was overriding his judgment. "He's got influence. People owe him favors." "What kind of favors?" "The kind that get property reviews expedited and court orders issued." I walked to the window, appearing to consider this information. "So you're saying Howard is using judicial corruption to steal my property?" "I'm saying he knows how to get things done." I turned back to face Franklin. And you're comfortable benefiting from corruption? It's not corruption. It's how the system works. I see. And what's my role in this system? Franklin's smile returned, ugly and confident. Your role is to get out of the way. What if I don't? Then things get unpleasant. What kind of unpleasant? Franklin moved toward the door, clearly feeling like he'd delivered his message effectively. The kind you don't want to find out about. After he left, I immediately called Mara. We need to meet, I said. Franklin just made some very interesting admissions. Did you record the conversation? Every word. We met an hour later at her office, a sleek space in a downtown high-rise that spoke of serious money and sophisticated clients. Play the recording, she said, settling behind her desk with a tablet and stylus ready. I played Franklin's visit from start to finish, watching Mira take notes as he incriminated himself and Howard with increasing specificity. This is perfect, she said when the recording ended. Admission of judicial corruption, threats of retaliation, conspiracy to defraud property rights. What can we do with it? Mira smiled, and again I saw that cold calculation behind her professional demeanor. We can destroy them completely. She pulled up several files on her tablet. I've been building cases against all three of them. This recording provides the missing pieces. What kind of cases? Howard's been using his judicial connections to manipulate property deals for years. Lana's been violating employment law and company policy systematically. Franklin's been running insurance scams through his car lot. How long have you been investigating them? Longer than you might think. Something in her tone made me study her face more carefully. Mira, what aren't you telling me? She set down the tablet and looked directly at me. I told you I had my own reasons for wanting to see these people fail. What reasons? Personal ones. How personal? She was quiet for a long moment, clearly debating how much to reveal. Howard Gold is my father. The admission hit like a physical blow. Your father. My biological father. He had an affair with my mother 24 years ago. When she got pregnant, he paid her to disappear and never contact him again. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process this information. So Lana is your half-sister, yes. And you've been planning revenge this whole time? I've been planning justice. There's a difference. Mira stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city. Howard destroyed my mother's life. She never recovered from what he did to her. She passed away 2 years ago, still believing she wasn't good enough for the Gold family. Why didn't you confront him directly? Because direct confrontation would have accomplished nothing. Howard has money, connections, and a reputation to protect. He would have found ways to discredit me or make me disappear. So you waited for an opportunity. I waited for the right opportunity. When I heard about your situation, I realized it was perfect. You had legitimate grievances and the technical skills to fight back. All you needed was support and information. I thought about everything that had happened since New Year's Eve. How much of this was planned? The broad strokes were planned. The specific details developed as opportunities arose. What's the end game? Mira returned to her desk and pulled up a comprehensive file on her tablet. Complete social, financial, and legal destruction. Howard loses his reputation and his influence. Lana loses her career and her social standing. Franklin loses everything he's worked to build. And what do I get out of it? You get your life back, and you get revenge on the people who tried to steal it from you. I studied the files she'd assembled. Months of investigation, documentation of crimes and ethical violations, evidence of corruption and fraud. This is incredibly thorough. I'm very good at my job, and very patient. Patience is essential for this kind of work. I closed the tablet and looked at her directly. What do you need from me? Continued cooperation. Access to your security systems and recordings. and the willingness to see this through to the end. What does the end look like? Public disgrace, financial ruin, legal consequences, complete social exile. For all of them? For all of them. I thought about Franklin's threats, Lana's betrayal, Howard's arrogant assumption that he could simply replace me. What's our next move? Mira smiled, and this time there was nothing professional about it. We give them exactly what they've been asking for. That evening, I returned to my hotel to find a message waiting at the front desk. Lana had called to arrange a meeting, claiming she had important information to share. I called her back from my room. Drake, thank you for calling. We need to talk. About what? About ending this situation in a way that works for everyone. I thought Franklin delivered your message this morning. There was a pause. Franklin sometimes says things he doesn't mean. I'd like to discuss this directly. Where? Somewhere private, away from Howard and Franklin. Why? Because I think we can work this out between ourselves. I agreed to meet her the next day at a restaurant downtown, curious about what new approach she was planning to try. The restaurant was upscale but not ostentatious, the kind of place Lana chose when she wanted to project sophistication without appearing desperate. She was already seated when I arrived, wearing a conservative dress and minimal makeup, a calculated attempt to appear vulnerable and reasonable. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down across from her. "What did you want to discuss?" "Our marriage, our future, the mistakes we've both made." "What mistakes have I made?" Lana leaned forward slightly, employing the body language she used when trying to manipulate someone. "You've been distant, focused on work instead of our relationship. I felt neglected. So you decided to have an affair. I made a mistake, but your response has been disproportionate." I signaled the waiter for coffee. "How so?" "You've destroyed Franklin's business. You've sabotaged my career. You've turned this into a war instead of trying to work things out." What would working things out look like? Counseling? Compromise? Finding a way forward that doesn't destroy everyone involved? Including Franklin? Lana's mask slipped slightly. Franklin made mistakes too, but he doesn't deserve to have his life destroyed. What about my life? Your life doesn't have to be destroyed. You could rebuild, start fresh. Without my house, my wife, or my assets, you'd get a fair settlement, enough to start over. I sipped my coffee and studied her face. Define fair. $500,000, plus your business equipment and personal items. It was more than twice Janet's offer, which meant their desperation was accelerating rapidly. That's generous. What would you get? The house, a chance to rebuild my career, a future with someone who appreciates me. Franklin appreciates you? He sees my value in ways you never did. What value is that? Lana's expression hardened slightly. I'm not going to justify my worth to you, Drake. I'm just curious about what Franklin sees that I missed. He sees a partner, someone to build a life with. What kind of life? A successful one. Franklin has plans, connections, ambitions. Had plans. His business is closed. That's temporary. He'll rebuild. With what resources? With Howard's backing, with my support, with the assets from our settlement. I nodded as if this made perfect sense. So the plan is for me to provide the funding for Franklin's new business venture? The plan is for everyone to move forward constructively. By giving you my house and $500,000 in cash so you can start a new life with the man you've been cheating with. Lana's composure cracked. It's not that simple. How is it not that simple? Because you've made it complicated. You've turned this into some kind of revenge fantasy instead of accepting reality. What reality is that? That our marriage is over. That I'm happier with Franklin. That fighting this will only hurt everyone involved. I finished my coffee and set the cup down carefully. You're probably right about the marriage being over. Lana's expression brightened slightly. So, You'll consider the settlement? I'll consider it, but I have some conditions. What conditions? I want a full accounting of how long the affair has been going on. I want documentation of all the planning that went into my replacement. And I want Franklin to personally apologize for trying to break into my house. Those are reasonable requests. Good. When can you provide the accounting? I'll need to think about the specifics. Take your time, but understand that my willingness to negotiate depends on complete honesty. Lana nodded eagerly. I appreciate you being reasonable about this. I'm always reasonable. It's one of my best qualities. After she left, I called Mara to report the conversation. She's trying to buy time, Mara said. Howard's legal maneuvers aren't working, so they're hoping to negotiate their way out. Are you ready for the next phase? I've been ready for weeks. It's time to stop playing defense. What do you have in mind? A public revelation that will destroy all their credibility at once. How public? Very public. Are you comfortable with that level of exposure? I thought about everything they'd done, the betrayal, the theft attempts, the threats, the corruption. I'm comfortable with justice. Good. Because tomorrow everyone in this city is going to know exactly who these people really are. The next morning I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. The first call I returned was to Mira. Have you seen the news? She asked without preamble. Not yet. What happened? Check Channel 7, or the newspaper website, or social media. It's everywhere. I turned on the television to find a local news anchor discussing a corruption scandal involving a retired judge, his daughter, and a used car dealer. The story had broken at 6 a.m. and was dominating the morning news cycle. The report included audio recordings of Howard discussing judicial favors, documentation of Lana's employment violations, and evidence of Franklin's insurance fraud. Everything was presented as part of an ongoing investigation into systemic corruption in local business and legal circles. My phone rang again. Howard's name appeared on the screen. Drake, we need to talk immediately. About what? About calling off whatever you've done to create this situation. I haven't done anything. I'm watching the news like everyone else. Don't lie to me. This is your revenge, and it ends now. How would I end something I didn't start? By telling the truth. By admitting you fabricated evidence and manipulated the investigation. I muted the television and focused on the conversation. Howard, are you asking me to confess to crimes I didn't commit? I'm asking you to fix this before it destroys innocent people. Which people are innocent? Lana made mistakes, but she doesn't deserve to have her career destroyed. Franklin was trying to build a legitimate business. What about the evidence of fraud and corruption? Evidence can be misinterpreted, taken out of context. Are you saying the recordings are fake? There was a long pause. I'm saying that private conversations can be misleading when presented without proper context. What context would make judicial corruption acceptable? Drake, I'm trying to be reasonable here. So am I. I'm trying to understand how you justify using your judicial connections to manipulate property law. I never manipulated anything. The recordings suggest otherwise. The recordings were obtained illegally. Were they? How do you know how they were obtained? Howard's voice took on the authoritative tone he'd used as a judge. This conversation is over, but understand that if you continue this course of action, there will be consequences. What kind of consequences? The kind that you won't enjoy. He hung up before I could respond. I called Mira immediately. Howard just threatened me. Good. That means he's panicking. Should I be worried about the threat? Not anymore. By tonight, Howard won't be in a position to threaten anyone. What happens tonight? The second wave of revelations, financial crimes, tax evasion, and conspiracy charges. How much more evidence do you have? Enough to ensure that none of them ever recover from this. Around noon, Franklin appeared at my hotel again. This time, He looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. His clothes were wrinkled, his face was unshaven, and his usual confidence had been replaced by barely controlled panic. "We need to make a deal," he said as soon as I opened the door. "What kind of deal?" "I'll disappear, leave town, never contact Lana again. In exchange, you call off the investigation." "What investigation?" Franklin pushed past me into the suite, his movements agitated and desperate. "Don't pretend you don't know what's happening. I know what I'm seeing on the news. Is there something else I should know about?" "The state attorney's office called this morning. They're opening a criminal investigation into my business practices." "That sounds serious." "It is serious. They're talking about fraud charges, prison time." Franklin began pacing around the room, his hands shaking slightly. "This is about more than your hurt feelings, Drake. This is about destroying people's lives." "Whose lives?" "Mine, Lana's, even Howard's." "What about my life?" Franklin stopped pacing and stared at me. "Your life is fine. You've got your house, your business, your freedom. I have those things because I fought to keep them. You have those things because you're vindictive." I sat down and gestured for Franklin to do the same. "Tell me about vindictive, Franklin." "What do you mean?" "You plan to take over my house, my assets, my entire life. How is that different from vindictive?" "That was business. This is personal." "How is stealing someone's life business?" Franklin's composure cracked completely. "We weren't stealing anything. Lana was unhappy. She wanted out of the marriage. I was offering her a better option. By moving into my house. By providing her with financial security and social advancement. Using my money and my property. Using resources that would have been wasted on someone who didn't appreciate them." I leaned forward. "So you decided I didn't deserve what I'd worked for?" "I decided Lana deserved better than what you were giving her." "And you deserved to profit from that decision?" Franklin's face reddened. "I deserved a chance to build something with someone who valued what I could offer." "What could you offer?" "Ambition, drive, the willingness to take risks and build wealth." "How's that working out for you now?" Franklin's anger finally exploded. "You destroyed everything I worked for, my business, my reputation, my future." "I didn't destroy anything. I reported violations that investigators confirmed." "You manipulated the system to get revenge." "I used the system the way it's designed to work." Franklin stood up abruptly and moved toward the window. "This isn't over, Drake." "What does that mean?" "It means you've made enemies, people who won't forget what you've done." "Are you threatening me, Franklin?" "I'm warning you, actions have consequences." "Yes, they do. Your actions led to criminal charges. My actions led to justice." Franklin turned back toward me, his face twisted with rage. "Justice? You call destroying innocent people justice?" "I call exposing criminals justice." "We're not criminals." "The state attorney seems to disagree." Franklin moved closer to where I was sitting, his hands clenched into fists. "You think you're so smart, but you've just made the biggest mistake of your life." I remained seated, looking up at him calmly. "How so?" "Because now we have nothing left to lose." That sounds like another threat. "It's a promise." Franklin headed toward the door, but stopped before leaving. "Enjoy your victory, Drake. It won't last." After he left, I immediately called hotel security and requested additional monitoring of my floor. Then I called Mira. "Franklin just escalated to direct threats." "Perfect. That's exactly what we needed." "What do you mean?" "He's about to do something stupid. When he does, we'll be ready." "How ready?" "Completely ready. Tonight's revelations will include evidence of conspiracy to commit violence." "What evidence?" "Text messages between Franklin and some associates discussing ways to solve the Drake problem through intimidation and assault." "When did you get those messages?" "This morning. Franklin's been making calls to some questionable contacts." "Should I be worried?" Not for long. By midnight, Franklin will be in custody. That evening, the second wave of news broke with even more devastating impact than the first. The investigation had expanded to include financial crimes, tax evasion, and conspiracy charges against all three of them. Howard was accused of using his judicial position to manipulate property deals for personal profit. Lana faced charges related to embezzlement and misuse of corporate resources. Franklin was looking at fraud, conspiracy, and now solicitation of violence. The evidence was overwhelming and meticulously documented. Financial records, recorded conversations, email communications, and witness testimony painted a picture of systematic corruption and criminal behavior. My phone rang constantly. Reporters, attorneys, curious neighbors, and people I hadn't spoken to in years. I ignored most of the calls, but answered when Lana's name appeared on the screen. "Drake, please, you have to stop this." Her voice was barely controlled, shaking with fear and desperation. "Stop what?" "The investigation, the charges, the media coverage." How would I stop a criminal investigation? By telling them the truth, by admitting you fabricated evidence. What evidence did I fabricate? The recordings, the documents, the financial records. Are you saying those things are fake? I'm saying they were taken out of context. What context would make embezzlement acceptable? Lana was crying now, her careful composure completely gone. "I made mistakes, but I don't deserve to go to prison." "What do you deserve?" "A chance to make things right, to pay back what I took, to start over." "With Franklin?" "Franklin's gone. He left town this afternoon." "Where did he go?" "I don't know. He said it wasn't safe to stay." I felt a cold satisfaction at this news. Franklin's abandonment of Lana was perfect poetic justice. "So your partner in crime abandoned you when things got difficult?" "He wasn't my partner in crime. He was someone who said he loved me." "But when you needed him most, he ran away?" Lana's sobbing intensified. "I know you hate me, but please don't let them destroy what's left of my life." "What's left?" "My future, my chance to rebuild, my hope that someday this will be behind me." "What about my future, the one you tried to destroy?" "You still have your future. You have your house, your business, your freedom." "I have those things because I fought for them." "You have those things because you're stronger than I am." It was the first honest thing she'd said to me in months. "Lana, the investigation isn't something I control. It's something that follows evidence wherever it leads. But you could tell them I cooperated, that I helped expose the corruption." "Did you help expose the corruption?" I could. I could tell them everything about Howard's deals and Franklin's schemes." "In exchange for what? Leniency? A chance to avoid prison?" I considered this offer. "What exactly would you tell them?" "Everything. Names, dates, amounts, methods. Howard's been manipulating property deals for years. Franklin's been running scams since he opened his lot." "And your role in all of this?" "I was stupid. I thought I was in love. I thought Franklin could give me a better life." "So you helped him steal mine?" "I helped him access information he needed for business deals." "What kind of information?" "Financial records, property assessments, personal data about potential targets." The admission was even more damaging than I'd expected. Lana had been actively participating in identity theft and fraud. "How many people were targeted?" "I don't know. Franklin handled the business side." "But you provided the information." "I provided access. I didn't know how he was using it." "You didn't ask?" "I didn't want to know." I thought about all the victims of Franklin's schemes, all the people who'd been defrauded while Lana provided insider information. "Lana, I think you should talk to the investigators. Tell them everything you know." "Will you put in a good word for me?" "I'll tell them you cooperated." "Thank you, Drake. I know I don't deserve your help." "You're right. You don't." The next morning, I received a call from Detective Sarah Martinez with the state attorney's office. Mr. Torren, I understand your wife has agreed to cooperate with our investigation. That's what she told me. Her information has been very helpful. We've identified at least 12 additional victims of the fraud scheme. How extensive was the operation? More extensive than we initially realized. The total damages are approaching $2 million. What happens next? We're preparing arrest warrants for Howard Gold and Franklin Ormsby. Mrs. Torren will likely face reduced charges in exchange for her cooperation. What about restitution for the victims? That will be part of the sentencing process, though recovering the stolen funds may be difficult. After the call ended, I sat in my hotel room, looking out at the city where I'd lived for 15 years. Everything had changed in less than a month. My marriage was over, my trust in people was shattered, but my life was finally my own again. My phone buzzed with a text from Mara. Franklin arrested at bus station, Howard in custody. It's over. I called her immediately. How did you know Franklin would be at the bus station? I've been tracking his movements since yesterday. He was trying to leave town with cash and fake identification. How much cash? Nearly $100,000, probably stolen from victims of his fraud scheme. And Howard? Arrested at his home this morning. The evidence against him is overwhelming. What happens now? Now they face justice, and you get your life back. What about you? Do you get what you wanted? There was a pause. I get to see my father face consequences for his actions. That's enough. Will you reveal your connection to him? Eventually, when the time is right. I looked around the hotel suite that had been my home for 3 weeks. I think it's time for me to go home. I think you're right. That afternoon, I checked out of the hotel and drove to my house. The property freeze had been lifted, the legal review was complete, and all systems were functioning normally. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed Mrs. Riley, my elderly neighbor, working in her garden. She waved and walked over to the fence. Drake, I'm so glad you're back. This whole situation has been terrible. Thank you, Mrs. Riley. It's good to be home. I never liked that Franklin character. Too slick by half. You were right about that. And Lana, well, I suppose everyone makes mistakes. Some mistakes are bigger than others. Mrs. Riley nodded sagely. The important thing is that justice was done. Sometimes the system works the way it's supposed to. Sometimes it does. I went inside and walked through rooms that felt both familiar and foreign. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. But the house felt different somehow. Cleaner. More honest. I opened my laptop and began the process of changing passwords, updating security protocols, and reclaiming digital accounts that had been compromised. It was methodical work, but satisfying. Around sunset, I received a final call from Howard. He was calling from jail, his voice stripped of its usual authority. Drake, I want you to know that I understand what you did. What did I do? You outplayed us, completely and thoroughly. I protected myself and my property. You did more than that. You orchestrated our destruction with precision and patience. I responded to your actions with appropriate countermeasures. You won, Drake. Congratulations. This wasn't about winning, Howard. It was about justice. Maybe, but it was also about revenge. And you got both. After he hung up, I poured myself a drink and sat on my back porch, looking out at the garden Lana had never cared about, and the yard I'd maintained myself for 15 years. My phone buzzed with one final text from Mara. Thank you for everything. Justice served. I typed back, thank you for your help. Good luck with your future. As darkness fell over the city, I realized that for the first time in months, I felt truly at peace. The people who had tried to steal my life were facing the consequences of their choices. The systems I'd built to protect what mattered were working exactly as designed. Tomorrow, I would begin rebuilding. Tonight, I would simply enjoy the quiet satisfaction of being home. The house systems hummed softly around me, all functioning perfectly under my control. Outside, the city continued its evening routine, unaware that a small but important piece of justice had been served. I raised my glass toward the security camera that had recorded everything and smiled. Happy New Year to me. 3 days after Franklin's arrest, I was working in my home office when the doorbell rang. Through the security monitor, I saw a young woman I didn't recognize standing on my front porch, holding what appeared to be legal documents. I opened the door to find someone who looked remarkably like Mara, but younger and more nervous. Mr. Torrin, I'm Jessica Torwin, Mara's sister. I didn't know Mira had a sister. We don't advertise our family connections. May I come in? I led her to the living room, noting the family resemblance in her features and the same alert intelligence in her eyes. What can I do for you, Jessica? She opened a folder and pulled out several documents. I'm here about the final phase of our operation. Our operation? The plan to destroy Howard Gold and everyone associated with him. I felt a chill run down my spine. I thought that was already complete. Jessica smiled, and it was identical to Mira's cold, calculating expression. The arrests were just the beginning. True justice requires complete destruction. What do you mean? I mean that Howard Gold needs to lose everything: his money, his property, his reputation, his freedom, and his family. His family? Lana is his daughter. You are his former son-in-law. Both connections need to be severed permanently. I studied Jessica's face, trying to understand what she was really saying. What exactly are you proposing? Lana's cooperation with the investigation has reduced her charges significantly. She'll probably serve minimal jail time and be free to rebuild her life. That seems appropriate given her cooperation. It's not appropriate given her crimes. She participated in fraud, theft, and identity manipulation that destroyed multiple lives. The legal system will determine her punishment. Jessica leaned forward. The legal system is insufficient. Lana needs to face social and financial consequences that ensure she never recovers. What kind of consequences? Complete social exile, financial ruin, professional destruction. How would that be accomplished? Jessica pulled out her tablet and showed me a comprehensive plan. Social media campaigns exposing her crimes, professional notifications to every company in her field, financial maneuvers that ensure she can never rebuild wealth. That sounds like harassment. It sounds like justice. I set the tablet aside. Jessica, I appreciate what you and Mara have done, but I'm not interested in pursuing additional revenge. This isn't revenge, it's completion. Completion of what? The destruction of everyone who wronged our family. Your family? Jessica's expression hardened. Howard Gold destroyed our mother. Lana participated in that destruction by accepting the privileges that came from our mother's exile. Lana was a child when that happened. Lana was old enough to benefit from stolen opportunities. Every advantage she received was taken from our mother. I stood up and walked to the window. Jessica, your anger is understandable, but this has to end somewhere. It ends when justice is complete. Justice has been served. Howard is facing criminal charges. Franklin is in jail. Lana is cooperating with investigators. Legal justice has been served. Social justice requires more. I turned back to face her. What does Mira think about this plan? Mira agrees that additional measures are necessary. Have you spoken to her about this? Jessica hesitated. Mira is focused on the legal aspects. I'm handling the social consequences. Without her knowledge? With her implicit approval. That's not the same thing. Jessica stood up and began pacing around the room. Mr. Torrin, these people tried to destroy your life. Don't you want to ensure they can never threaten you or anyone else again? I want them to face appropriate consequences for their actions. What's appropriate? What the legal system determines. The legal system is designed to protect people like Howard Gold, wealthy, connected, influential people who know how to manipulate the system. The system worked in this case. The system worked because we forced it to work, because we provided evidence and pressure that couldn't be ignored. Jessica pulled up another file on her tablet. But Howard still has assets, still has connections, still has the ability to rebuild and seek revenge. What kind of revenge? The kind that destroys you financially and professionally, the kind that makes your life impossible. She showed me documents detailing Howard's remaining assets and connections. He's already making calls from jail, arranging for legal representation, planning appeals and countermeasures. That's his right. It's his opportunity to escape justice and pursue revenge. I studied the documents, noting the extent of Howard's remaining resources. What are you proposing? Complete asset forfeiture, professional sanctions that prevent him from ever practicing law again, social exposure that destroys his reputation permanently. How would that be accomplished? Through additional evidence of his crimes. Evidence that ensures maximum sentences and complete disgrace. What additional evidence? Jessica smiled. Evidence of judicial corruption going back 20 years. Evidence of tax evasion, money laundering, and conspiracy. Do you have this evidence? We've been gathering it for months. We? Mira and I, and others who have been wronged by Howard Gold over the years. I sat back down, trying to process the scope of what she was describing. How many others? Dozens. Howard's been using his judicial position for personal gain his entire career. Why hasn't this come out before? Because the victims were isolated, intimidated, convinced that fighting back was hopeless. But now? Now we have organization, evidence, the ability to coordinate a response that Howard can't suppress or manipulate. Jessica showed me testimonials from other victims, documented evidence of corruption, and plans for a comprehensive exposure campaign. This is incredibly thorough, I admitted. It's also completely justified. I thought about Howard's arrogant assumption that he could simply replace me, his casual dismissal of my rights, his threats when his plans failed. What would my role be in this? Provide testimony about his attempts to manipulate property law, share recordings of his threats, support the other victims in their pursuit of justice. That seems reasonable. There's more. Jessica pulled up another file. We want you to file a civil lawsuit against all three of them, seek damages for fraud, conspiracy, and emotional distress. How much damages? Everything they have, everything they've stolen, everything they've gained through illegal means. That could be millions. It should be millions. These people have been stealing from victims for years. I considered the proposal. A civil lawsuit would be expensive and time-consuming, but it would also ensure that they faced financial consequences beyond criminal penalties. What about Lana's cooperation agreement? Cooperation agreements protect against additional criminal charges. They don't prevent civil liability. So she could still lose everything financially? She should lose everything financially. I thought about Lana's tears during our last conversation, her desperate plea for mercy, her admission that she'd been stupid and naive. Jessica, I understand your desire for complete justice, but at some point, enough is enough. Is it enough when the victims are still suffering while the criminals rebuild their lives? What victims are still suffering? Jessica showed me current information about Franklin's fraud victims. Many were elderly people who'd lost their life savings. Others were young families who'd been targeted for identity theft. These people will never recover what they lost. They deserve to see their attackers face complete consequences. What would complete consequences look like? Howard loses his freedom, his assets, and his reputation. Lana loses her career, her social standing, and her financial security. Franklin serves maximum prison time and pays full restitution. And if they've already learned their lesson? People like this don't learn lessons. They learn to be more careful next time. Jessica closed her tablet and looked at me directly. Mr. Torin, you have a choice. You can be satisfied with partial justice, or you can help ensure that these criminals never hurt anyone again. What if I choose partial justice? Then you'll always wonder if you did enough, and you'll always worry about what they might do next. What if I choose complete justice? Then you'll know that you protected future victims and honored the people who helped you. I thought about everything that had happened since New Year's Eve. The betrayal, the theft attempts, the threats, the systematic destruction of my life that had been planned and executed without remorse. How long would a civil lawsuit take? Months, maybe years, but the process itself would be punishment for them. And the outcome? Complete financial destruction. They'd lose everything and spend years paying damages to victims. What about my own recovery? You'd be compensated for your losses and your suffering, probably more than compensated. I walked around the room, thinking about the implications of extending this battle indefinitely. Jessica, I need to talk to Mira before I make any decisions. Of course, but don't wait too long. The statute of limitations on some of these claims is approaching. After Jessica left, I called Mira immediately. Did your sister just visit me? Jessica? What did she want? To discuss the final phase of destroying Howard, Lana, and Franklin. There was a long pause. What final phase? Civil lawsuits, social media campaigns, complete financial and social destruction. Drake, I never authorized anything like that. She said she was acting with your implicit approval. She was acting on her own initiative. Jessica has always been more aggressive than I am. More aggressive how? She believes in total war, complete destruction of enemies, no mercy, no limits. What do you believe in? Appropriate justice, proportional response, consequences that fit the crimes. I felt relieved to hear this. So you don't support additional revenge measures? I support justice, but I also believe in knowing when to stop. When should we stop? We should stop when the criminals are facing appropriate legal consequences and the victims are protected from future harm. Have we reached that point? I think we have. Howard and Franklin are facing serious criminal charges. Lana is cooperating with investigators. The fraud scheme has been exposed and shut down. What about Jessica's concerns about future revenge? Jessica sees threats everywhere. It's her nature to assume the worst and plan for total war. Should I be worried about Howard seeking revenge? Howard will be focused on defending himself against criminal charges. He won't have time or resources for revenge. And Lana? Lana will be focused on rebuilding her life. She's learned that crossing you has serious consequences. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. So this is really over. The justice phase is over. The recovery phase is just beginning. What does recovery look like? It looks like you rebuilding your life on your own terms. It looks like the victims getting restitution. It looks like the criminals serving their sentences and hopefully learning from their mistakes. What about you? What does recovery look like for you? It looks like knowing that what happened to my mother has been acknowledged, that the man who ruined her life has faced consequences, that justice has finally been delivered. Are you satisfied with that? I'm satisfied with knowing that I did everything I could to protect future victims and honor past ones. After the call ended, I sat in my living room looking around at the space that was truly mine again. The house systems hummed quietly, the security cameras monitored the perimeter, and everything functioned exactly as I'd designed it. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Have you decided about the civil lawsuit? I typed back, I've decided to focus on recovery rather than additional revenge. She responded immediately, That's a mistake. These people will strike back when you least expect it. I'll deal with that if it happens. It will happen, and when it does, remember that you chose mercy over justice. I turned off my phone and poured myself a drink. Outside, the sun was setting over a city where 3 criminals were facing the consequences of their choices, where dozens of victims were finally seeing justice, and where I was free to rebuild my life without fear. Tomorrow, I would begin that rebuilding process. Tonight, I would simply enjoy the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I had protected myself and others without becoming the kind of person who pursued revenge without limits. The security system chimed softly, indicating that all perimeters were secure. All systems were functioning normally. All threats had been neutralized. I raised my glass toward the camera that had recorded everything and smiled one final time. Justice served. Case closed.